State of Mississippi. We welcome to the program Mr. George Dale, board member for the Mississippi Public Employees Retirement System. George, thanks for coming on, sir.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Let me quickly say, Gerard, thanks for being here, but I don't really want to be here. I am not a representative of the PERS board. Okay. I am a member of the PERS board that has some strong opinions on some things, and last week I attended the legislative budget hearing when the executive director of PERS, Ray Higgins, who does a good job, was making a presentation supposedly about our budget. Well, as it would be, they never talked any about the budget. They proceeded to, some of them, telling him how we were unconcerned or not capable, or whatever the word I should use. And I had to bite my tongue. And being a member of the gallery, you can't speak. So I decided maybe I'll go at it a different way. We are concerned. When I say we, I'm talking about the 9 members of the board, of the future of PERS. I'm kind of caught in a bind. I'm elected by the retirees who basically don't want to change anything. And I can appreciate that because I enjoy the income that I get after my 50 years in state service. I've got a good retirement, and I've got a wonderful 13th check. But I've got 2 children that teach school, and I would like for them to have a good retirement. And one of the reasons they continue to teach school is they know that the state of Mississippi has a good retirement.
Right.
So I'm kind of caught in a bind, wondering what's going to happen 20 years from now as opposed to what's going to happen next week. So I'm here to express my opinion.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, George. I really do. And you may have heard me discuss this situation, this subject, rather extensively here on the program. And I do it not to be critical. I do it just to inform and to point out this is something that's got to be addressed. It's not going to correct itself on its own. I know you're well aware of that. I'm quite sure the board knows that, and so does Mr. Higgins and their folks down at the legislature. Now, you know as well as I do, this is not a popular subject among those running for office, normally because almost whatever you say somehow gets taken out of context. If you just say, hey, look, we got to do something, immediately the response is, oh, my gosh, they want to cut my benefits.
No, they want to cut my 13th check.
And you hear that regularly.
I hear that more than anything. I drank coffee with a lot of people in Clinton. You know, when you're retired, your bladder expands because you have to drink more coffee. You got to have something to do. And that's what I hear from all those state retirees or former school teachers or city employees or whatever. Don't touch my 13th check.
Yeah, and it's understandable because, first, nobody ever wants to go backwards. Taking something away from somebody is just always politically unpopular, to say the least. And many have built a lifestyle around this income, and well, they should. The unfortunate reality is that I don't think it's sustainable on the current path that we're on, and there are third parties who've told us that have said you're in red signal light status in the 3 categories of measurements, the 3 principal ways we measure, define benefit systems. You're kind of looking negative in all 3 of those.
What I resent is being categorized as we're the problem. We being the board, we're the messenger. And the message that we're telling people is the same thing you've just said. We're fine today. Our retirement system is a good retirement system. There's over $30 billion in reserves. It's hard to get excited when you've got $30 billion in the bank. But again, you look at what we're paying out as opposed to what we're taking in. You look at people living longer. And what I didn't like is Section 25-11-133 says the Mississippi legislature shall fund the retirement system.
Yeah.
Our job as a board is to select a director, which we did, made a good selection, Ray Higgins, and to be sure that our system is solvent and handle investments and et cetera. And we do that with, I think, a pretty good job, conservative investments, and have done well. Has to be funded, how to go forward with benefits and whatever. In my opinion, you've got you can do two things, one of two things, or a combination of both, to correct the situation: put more money in it, or cut benefits.
I've said the same thing a million times, George. Rhino can shake his head at that. I've said it a million times. You got three options: more coming in, less going out. Combination of the two.
That's correct.
You could do both.
And what's irritable to me is after I was elected, I'm into my beginning my second term as elected by the retirees as a member of that board. I think it's a 5-year term. I'll be 88, 89 years old at the end of this term if I don't go to the retirement system somewhere else. But I really can make whatever decision I want to.
Sure.
And we have a very good board. Some of them have been on it a while. They're very capable, and I trust the decision or recommendations they make. But we can't get an audience. We continue to ask the makers and the shakers, let's meet and let's talk of how we can come up with a solution to address these problems. But to hear this yapping from some that don't know what they're talking about sometimes, it's the board's fault. The boards are going to make the cities and the counties pay money that they don't have. We're aware of that. But let's talk and come up with an alternative, and we can't get an audience.
Well, when you say you can't get an audience, you're talking about from the legislature, George?
All right, here's what I've done. When I was first elected, I wrote a letter to the Speaker and to the Lieutenant Governor.
Okay.
Let me encourage you to take a look at PERS.
Okay.
And we never followed up on it. I was asked to vote against the request that more money be put in by the legislature into PERS, and 3 of us voted against it. Well, by a vote of 6-3, the vote was to send a recommendation over to the legislature and to put more money in it. Now, when you say I put more money in it, it's not only by the legislature. The state of Mississippi can do that, but it trickles down to the cities and the counties, the Summeralls and the Prentices,
school districts,
and the school districts. Their budget is tight.
Right.
To meet that obligation, some of them would have to lay off policemen and firemen and not hire assistant teachers and whatever. We're aware of that.
Or raise taxes.
We're aware of that. But to be accused that we don't care, I think is not correct. We do care. So let's visit with the decision makers to come up to a way to ease that pain as best we can. It's kind of like the situation on a national level, and you know this better than me. We know that Social Security and Medicare on a national level will be in trouble if nothing is done.
Right.
But nobody will touch it.
Right. You're absolutely right, because it's politically unpopular, it's politically toxic, and they just keep kicking the can down the road. You could argue that's sort of what's happening with PERS here, because we got to take some action. Now, you have taken at least action on the employer contribution rate. The board, right, voted to raise that, and that's been a bit controversial, George. It was 5 percentage points scheduled to go into effect a couple of days ago, October 1, and then they delayed that till next July, and now it's being phased in over 3 years. We got a break right here. We'll talk about it on the other side. We got George Dale, a board member at Mississippi Public Employees Retirement Systems, in the element. Mr. Dale and I were just talking about the recent action on the part of the PERS board to increase the employer contribution rate by 5 percentage points. That would take it from the present 17.4, I believe, to 22.4.
That's correct.
The employees is at 9%. Is it right? Is that right?
I think it's 7. Either 7 or 9. I'm not sure, but theirs would not be touched. It didn't include theirs. Just the employer.
Yeah. For some reason, George, I think it doesn't matter, though. But the bottom line is we're not touching that at this point.
That's correct. But the thing about it, and this is what really stings, is that that additional 5%. The problem is not for the Mississippi legislature and the state employees. The legislature can do the right thing on
just
that.
send them more money.
But it's the counties, the cities, and the school systems will also have to be that same percentage, and it will really sting if it goes there. And that's where I'm really concerned for.
Yeah, because those political subdivisions don't get their money from the state. They have to raise it locally through property taxes. They get a sales tax diversion that we send to the state, and then they turn around and divert 18% change back to the municipalities. Counties don't get anything. School districts get, their MAEP funding, but for the most part, they've got to fund their operations with ad valorem taxes.
Yeah, that's correct, and it just says shall, and that means it has to be done. Whenever I was in the school system at Moss Point, somebody told me one time when the budget for the school system goes to the city, it also said shall, and they could complain and bellyache about it, but they had to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's the same situation we have here.
It absolutely is. So that's it just continues to be a problem that we got to address. So this, some of the local leaders, as you pointed out, they've expressed their concerns about the this 5% that they've got to now absorb, and some are concerned about having to raise taxes. But do you think the legislature should perhaps respond with maybe diverting more of the sales tax?
Well, there's some things that can be done, and we. Our board meets, I think, about 3 weeks from now, and we have been in discussions about some possible things or suggestions that can be considered, and we would just like an opportunity to present those. Okay. And I can understand the president of the Mississippi Municipal Association has been fielding those questions from his members and complaints, and I can understand that. But I called that person, and I have not received a call back. One of the people at the hearing was a mayor of one of the North Mississippi towns, and I saw her from a distance at the Southern Miss Tulane football game, and by the time I got through the crowd to try to lasso her, well, she had gone on to bigger and better things. So I have been unsuccessful in getting somebody's ear in the policymakers. Let's talk about this.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Rather than play the name game or the blame game, we're not the enemy. We're just the messenger.
Yeah. Well, when you look at what's driving the financial challenges of PERS, one of the things, as you well know, you pointed out, we're living longer, and this is a defined benefit plan, which means benefits stay for life. One receives benefits for life, which is a good and attractive part about working in the public sector, is you get this defined benefit plan.
Did you know last year, I saw this and I thought it was interesting. Last year there were 97 people that were 100 years or older that were in PERS. Could you imagine what that person was drawing whenever they first started teaching school in Sebastopol or somewhere, and now they're drawing a PERS check and they're 100 or over?
I absolutely did see that, and I can tell you that when you look at that folks at that age, in that retirement age range, their cost of living payment, which is known as the 13th check, I guess commonly, is about 10x when I looked at it, what their service benefit is.
Yeah.
And about half of recipients, I think, when I looked at it, have a cost of living benefit that exceeds their service benefit.
You know what people don't realize? I think it was in the 90s, back when things were going good financially, and the legislature passed enlarging the benefits,
right?
And that was good. But the only problem is they didn't attach to additional funding to that, and that's good. And that's the reason at the budget hearing last week, I noticed it was just obvious that older legislators who were aware of that and were there when it happened, they didn't have much to say. It was some of the younger ones that really were more vocal, and I understand that. But there's some value of us old folks that can still remember stuff are still around. But we get asked the question. You're talking about state employees.
Yeah.
Who cares about state employees, school teachers, and whatever? They draw a check. Why should I, as a private citizen, be concerned about their retirement?
Yeah.
Where I work at Acme 2 plant, we got a little retirement. It's not very good. Why should I be worrying about the solvency or insolvency or whatever with the state employees and teachers and so forth? The retirement system, what effect it has on our economy is like a major industry. Did you realize, or some people don't realize, that in Hinds County, there are over 10,000 people that receive a check from PERS. Last year, $318 million for retirement went out to these individuals, and that's money plowed into the economy. Wow. Rankin County, $205 million. Madison County, $164 million, or $687 million in these three counties of money that's invested in the economy from our state, our employees.
So one of the things actions you guys recently took was to lower the target return on investment rate.
That's right, from 7.5% to 7%. And that's I know the actuaries recommended that, but that's just a guess. Who knows the political climate we're in, whether or not investments will be better, worse, or whatever, but most all actuaries say that need to be done, and so that's what we did.
You feel like, George, that back in the 90s when we increased the benefit structure, that was probably based on an expectation that you'd be able to generate more returns on investments on the portfolio. We also had a higher ratio of active employees paying in.
That's correct. Today, we have 117,000 people in Mississippi that receive a check from the state retirement system. There's 145,000 people paying in. That number gets closer and closer every year, where we're going to, in the future, the rate that it's going, the number of people that are retiring each year, we're going to have probably more people taking than more putting in.
Yeah. It's really incredible. So I'm looking. I had that wrong. I just want to clarify this. Those who retired in 1987 and prior, their total annual benefits, excluding their cost of living adjustment, the 13th check, is $10 million is what the benefit is. The cost of living check is $21 million. I remember where I got the 10x figure. So it's about double. The 10x figure, George, is when I did an exercise where I took the base service benefit from that time period, and then I just adjusted it for inflation over that period of time. And that figure comes out to be about 1/10, as I recall, than what we actually pay as a cost of living adjustment, meaning the adjustment actually exceeds inflation.
The PERS every month pays out a little less than $200 million per month goes out the door in payments to people like me. And then in December, when the 13th check is added to that, you're talking about close to $1 billion goes out the door in the month of December. And one of the recommendations that we would like to be considered is give the employees an opportunity to take that 13th check monthly, whereas that big bunch of money wouldn't go out at one time.
It puts financial pressure, cash pressure on PERS to have to come up with that money. I mean, they can plan for it, reserve it, but it's still kind of an uneven match of expenses and revenues, and that is a problem. If you can hang around, I want to see your thoughts about the future and how we ought to address this. We got George Dale, a member of the PERS board, in the Element Well studio. We got Mr. George Dale, board member of the Public Employees Retirement System in the state of Mississippi. So Mississippi's planned solvency is just behind the most insolvent last I checked, at the rankings of all the 50 states. I think Illinois, Kentucky are way up on the list, and Mississippi's not far behind. And just in terms of these metrics that actuaries use to evaluate the overall financial soundness of the program, the concern I have, George, is that we got rising inflation, and of course, the beneficiaries, they need cost of living adjustments to keep up with that. We have a system that really doesn't consider the CPI, and so in those years where we had little or no inflation, they were still getting a cost of living adjustment.
Well, that's true, but now I don't want people to be led to believe that we're going broke tomorrow. We're not.
That's right.
But decisions that we make in these is for down the road. As I said a minute ago, my 2 kids that teach school, down the road, they enter the system. So those of you that are listening, don't run out and have a semi-heart attack that the retirement system going broke. That's not what I said.
Totally true.
But I will quick to say, though, that public pensions nationwide are beginning to be strained and need some attention. The state of Illinois, you mentioned, they had some serious problems with their retirement system, and the legislature said, we ain't going to fund it. We're not going to do it. Well, they did that for 2 or 3 years, and then they started playing catch-up. Well, they were so far behind in the solvency of it, it affected their bond rating. So now they're paying more in their bonds that they issue than they ever would have paid if they had kept their retirement system solvent and vibrant. And so that's kind of what you have to guard against.
Yeah, and so you want to keep those bond rates, those interest rates down, especially in a rising interest rate environment. It's already starting to cost more money to borrow money, and the state is no exception to that. We hope we don't borrow money. In the last couple of years, we've had good performance from a revenue and expense perspective. Our legislature's been responsible there, so we hadn't borrowed any money, hadn't added any debt.
That's true,
but we still have debt on the books.
But we do have a pretty large bonded indebtedness in the state of Mississippi.
We do.
Yeah.
And that's we just haven't in the last couple of years. We haven't had to increment that, but certainly could affect us. And you never know when you got to go to the well and borrow money. When you do that, when those interest rates, based on your rating, which does incorporate the solvency of PERS, because it is a state obligation, because you just read it. Statute says the legislature will fund PERS. It's my understanding also, George, that if the board makes any adjustments to the employee contribution rate, which I did review, it is 9%. It changed back in 2011 or 2010. But nonetheless, if the legislature does, the board does increase the employee rate, then the legislature has to increase benefits. That's what I was told by PERS. That if the board says, look, we're going to raise the employee rate, and I'm not saying you guys are even thinking about that. I've seen no utterance of such. But if you were to take the 9% to 10%, for example, it's my understanding in discussions with PERS management, that the legislature would have to increase benefits commensurate with that increase in the employee rate.
I cannot answer that. I do know. First time I've heard that, and it may and probably true, but I can't answer that.
Well, that's fine.
Because I don't know.
But there's been no discussion, has there, among the board members that you can share with us to increase the employee contribution rate?
We've talked about it, but we have tried purposely to stay away from that as best we can.
Okay.
In fact, that would be probably we would get to more screams and from those individuals and we would from a collective body like the Mississippi legislature, who is bombarded from all sides of everybody wanting more money, and we know that, and we just join in the chorus of those asking for more money.
Okay. So the benefits themselves, is my understanding, George, are actually embedded in state statute.
That's correct. As I said earlier, my understanding is my responsibility as a board is to pick a director, which we did,
okay,
and to be sure that the plan is solvent, which we're working on being sure that's done.
Okay. Well, and the other challenge is you well know, is that there are those who call for our government to shrink the size of government, and that typically means reducing headcount. When you reduce headcount, you're actually putting more pressure on PERS, at least in the short term. Maybe in the long term, it may be better in that, well, we got less benefits to fund in the future. But PERS as a defined benefit plan is more of a pay-as-you-go system, meaning money that's coming in now from people working funds benefits for the people who are getting benefits out now. So it's just like Social Security in that regard.
You know, I've smiled when some of my friends who just went through this election and was bragging to the voters, and they should, we have cut the size of government, and that politically sounds so good, and it is good. It's government is too big, on state and national level. That puts a bigger strain when less people are paying in. You cut that amount, then it does kind of crimp the style. A word about where all this came from. I went back. It's interesting. I used to teach history a long time ago, and I love the historical aspect of things. And, of course, when you get old like me, you know more things in the past than you do in the future, of course. But the retirement system actually started in 1944 simply for the teachers.
Okay.
In 1950, the Highway Department employees lobbied the legislature for 2 years saying, we want a retirement system. Well, a state legislator named Mitchell Robinson from Hinds County introduced a bill to create a retirement system for the Highway Department. So in 1952, that legislation passed, creating one. Well, then they immediately began to add the state employees, and then shortly after that, they added the county and city employees. Well, the teachers already had theirs, and so those teachers that were in the system in 1944, they had to let them kind of run off the books before they became a completely 100% part of the state retirement system. Every state's retirement system basically are different. Ours is different in a number of ways, but the main way is that we include so many entities. We got teachers, city and county governments, state employees, which is a big lot of folk. Now, the Highway Patrol has a separate system, but we manage it for them. The Mississippi Legislature has a separate system, but we also manage that. So actually, a PERS board is overseeing 3 retirement systems. And the legislature and the Highway Patrol are probably more viable financially because of they're not as large as the other one would be. You asked a minute ago off the air, what do we do?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Many states are wrestling with this question of what to do about their retirements, and some of them the problems are bigger than others. Ours is being enlarged because of the factor of the size and who all it includes, all these entities that I mentioned. Louisiana is a good example. Louisiana, like Mississippi, has just gone through a couple of years where the legislature had a big surplus, as Mississippi did, with all the federal COVID money and the other money that came in. We had a big surplus. Well, in Mississippi, what our leadership did, and I understand this, they gave us tax cuts, and that's good. In an election year, that was a great thing to do. But in Louisiana, they are on their ballot in November is for 25% of the surplus amount of money that they encounter will go to the state retirement system to reduce that unfunded liability. Tomorrow, if our system went broke, we would pay 63 cents of a dollar to the membership.
60% funded.
We're 60% funded. That means we're 40% is unfunded liability. We would like that 60% to move to about 80%. Will this additional infusion of money move us closer to that 80%? I hope it would.
It'd take a few years, I think.
It
hadn't done the math on it.
Yes, it would take a while. I think 2044, provided everything stays like it is now. But we can't predict the political system
right.
and all those things that we have no control over.
Economic factors, et cetera.
Yeah.
George, appreciate you coming on.
Glad
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Yes, sir.
And, it's always good to be here. One of the things that I miss in the political world is not being asked to do things. So Gerard, you I know you just ran out of guests, but you don't know how much I appreciate an
Appreciate you
opportunity
coming in.
to be somebody again.
We'll do it again. We're coming right back.